Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode.
Hi, everyone. This is Michael Rochelle, the Chief Strategy Officer and Principal Analyst from the Brandon Hall Group. Good morning to everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, depending on when you get an opportunity to watch this interview. Very fortunate to have been able to sit down with both Steve and Bob from VPS, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. This is an extraordinary opportunity to learn about what we think are the big trends that are going in learning development from one of the top providers in the space in assisting learning organizations worldwide. Both Steve and Bob have tremendous experience in the space and is going to be sharing some intriguing and thought-provoking answers from the questions I'll be asking them today. Bob and Steve, how are you today?
Thank you. Doing great. Thank you, Michael.
If you can give a quick intro and background on each one of you.
Go, Bob, you go first.
Bob Szostak. I am the Director of Customer Solutions for VPS, also known as Vertex Professional Services. Excited to have this opportunity to talk about this today. This is our first time that we're actually doing this as part of the podcast, and excited to be on here with Brandon Hall and sharing some of the insights, as Michael said, of what we've seen in the market in 2023 and perhaps where that's going in 2024. Steve, over to you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Bob. Yeah, Steve Thompson, also from VPS. I'm responsible for our EMEA business, and really keen to get into this conversation because it's all too rare we get the time to sit back and not relax, but sit back and at least reflect on what we're seeing. And I'm pretty confident from the sort of questions we've considered that some of the answers may surprise you, some of the answers may reassure you as well. So, we're keen to share, and I'm keen to hear what you guys are going to say as well, really from Brandon Hall's perspective, because you see a tremendous cross-section of the industry, which we're privy to, obviously, but not as well versed in it on a day-to-day basis.
One thing I can say to us on this interview and also to everyone in the audience is I can't imagine jamming in more change and transformation and evolution in this time period. I think we would all agree that I don't think there's any more room for anything else to think about. The mind share is maxed out at this point in learning and development. But I think it's a great segue into the first question. So what do you think were the top three topics for both challenges and just general trends that happened in the learning industry in 2023?
I think for me it's been interesting. We work with a whole range of clients in different industries who we've been fortunate enough to be in partnership with in some way, shape or form for many years, some of them over 20 years. At the same stage, we're talking to, and we're lucky, we're talking to an increasing number of new prospects who are coming to us for the first time. But there is commonality. Well, I've seen commonality on my side of the pond this year. There's, however it's phrased, whatever issues, a lot of people we're talking to are asking for advice on how they can handle different learning modules, especially different forms of distance learning in the current environment. As businesses are getting back to work, admittedly, it's 3 years since the pandemic, but a lot of companies we're dealing with, say old and new to us, are sort of trying to face that challenge of motivating employees to learn, to share, because increasingly they're working in a remote location. So we coined the phrase earlier this year of trying to advise on hybrid learning in a hybrid world. And it's much more than the traditional blend of, we'll put some stuff into e-learning, which I think we'd all agree accelerated over the pandemic time. I think as it's settled down, it's like, okay, we've made a leap. Is it the right leap? Am I getting return on my investment? What can you do to help me make remote learning more effective? So that's certainly been one trend that's existed across the piece.
Yeah, Steve, I also had the kind of the normalization of the hybrid and the post-COVID. I'm not sure for post-COVID, but wherever we are, normalization of hybrid was certainly one of the top three. A couple other things that I noted in conversations we've been having as we look across the industry is what to do with AI, right? I mean, that's the new, bright new, shiny object out there. So that's occupying a lot of people's minds as these things do when new technology comes into place. And the other thing that, that I noted, and it might be not that folks are talking about, but what we're not talking about is I've seen a decrease in the focus on what's traditionally the low end of training. It's almost like as we move towards technology, I don't see as much conversation about engagement and activity around traditional training, compliance training, things of that nature. It's almost like that's been not forgotten about, but certainly not prioritized to the extent that we've seen it in the past.
I would agree. It's almost as though the issues of core principles, if you like, have been clouded by shiny things. We spent a bit of time this year looking at virtual academies, and people want to talk about, I've got a headset, what can I do with it? Instead of really, what am I trying to get across? What the people I'm trying to reach need? And sometimes you feel as though with existing customers as well, it's a case of just okay, let's just slow down, let's consider where we're going, and you're almost feeling, well, not guilty. I don't think guilty is the right word, but reluctant to think, well, I'm not taking the money to go and give you the new response. Let's just reflect why we're trying to do this, what's needed, and I think that's actually, people wouldn't want to admit it, but that's actually been a trend this year. Is people want to rush to an answer. You stop, you pause, you take breath, and it's okay. Well, we might not need exactly what we thought we needed. And that's great when we have that conversation, because we're as keen as anybody to introduce the newest and greatest technology, but also for a reason. And I guess for me, underpinning with, and we know customers are often reluctant to say it, there is still a real need to maximize the benefit of what they're spending. Cost savings, whether it's return on investment or sometimes maybe a return on expectation. People don't like to admit, nobody likes to admit, I've only got a little bit of money, but give me the greatest solution. But you sometimes get to that. And that's come out a lot, I think, this year in the kind of opportunities we're being engaged in.
Yeah, I think all three are great, but I really see from what we see in working with learning organizations, I think the third one kind of is the capstone to it all. Is whether I'm looking at AI, whether I'm trying to deal with hybrid work, all these different factors are gating factors and challenges with how do I show the impact of learning? How do I show it's achieving a maximum return on investment for the effort that we're putting in? So couldn't agree with you more. And do you think these will continue to be the challenges for 2024 and beyond?
Largely, yes. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be, here you go, this is going to be a dreadful prediction. There's always going to be an AI. There's always going to be something. And if you think about the last 20 years or so, and despite appearances, Bob and I have been around the last 20 years, whether it was a move to computer-based learning, whether it was a move to web learning, whether I had to have video, every couple of years or so, it's a must-have. And that's still the case. And I think AI, understandably, will be refined and developed and be key. But behind it, there will still be, what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to reach? Why are we trying to reach them? And an alignment to business objectives. Again, sounds cliche, but it's really key. Why? No matter what piece of research you look at, whether it's something from yourselves, or whether it's other organisations such as Mind Tools or people we've worked with in the past over here in Europe, like Nelson Hall, the fundamentals there, if you're going to do training, why are you doing it? And I think that will remain. And if we can be mature in the conversations that we have, that doesn't have you want to leap at the next shiny thing, but actually reflect why, I think that will continue. definitely. And that will help with dealing with the working from home, or help dealing with the teamwork that's required around new products or the common things that we're seeing. So I agree with you. I think they will.
Yeah, agreed, Steve. I definitely see, certainly AI, and as you said, the normalization of the hybrid work environment, whatever that looks like, being continuing factors. Um, when I think about AI in particular, or whatever the bright, shiny technology is, I sometimes think we do look, we know it gets attention, right? We know it grabs people, and it can be the front end to another conversation. Um, but sometimes I feel like we almost do a disservice by prioritizing that, or blowing it up to such an extreme, to the exclusion of other topics, because we know it's going to get that attention. We know it's top of mind. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking about it and presenting smart use cases for how to implement it and integrate it into a learning ecosystem. But let's temper it down just a little bit. It's going to have enough momentum on its own.
But what I think is really important as well. Sorry to cut across, Mike. Is we've got to embrace it, and want to encourage ourselves to learn about it. I think this is quite a dangerous thing as well with some organisations. Luckily, not many that we're working with, because most of those tend to ask us for an opinion, at least. But there are some organisations that seem to want to push AI away. Oh, it's dangerous. It's taking jobs away. What about data protection? What about this? Well, the genie's out of the bottle. And for us as responsive and responsible providers of learning for our customers, we should be in a position to be able to advise and offer opinion, not necessarily, as we said, jump on the next bandwagon, but at least have a view on how the latest tools can help us do our jobs better. And we spend increasing amounts of time just trying to play, experiment, see what's going on, so that at least you can offer decent consultation in response. And it's a fun journey. There are some things we're seeing in AI in terms of the generative AI. You think, wow, when I was a lad, if only somebody could help me write a report, that'd be great. But you've got to do it responsibly. And I think increasingly, I see with the customers over here, people are just saying, well, what do you think? Not what can I buy, but what do you think? And I think it's important for us to have that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think all the points that you both brought up are excellent ones. We can all agree that none of these challenges are going to go away, and they're going to create new ones for us. But we're all on the edge of our seats to figure out what's the best thing to do to prepare ourselves for being successful in 2024. So we know what we're up against. But what are you seeing at VPS as the best way to, almost in a way, future-proof the learning and development organization to be successful in 2024?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one first, Steve. If anyone has talked to me, this is going to sound like a broken record. And for those of younger folks, I'll explain to you what a record is at some point in time. Um, what's interesting is as the topics change and we go through different cycles, the things that organizations need to do to be prepared doesn't change. You have to take the time to create your organizational blueprint for learning. You have to understand what's needed to support performance across job roles, across the organizations. I've yet to run into a business that has unlimited time and unlimited budget, or a very finite list of priorities. They say, yeah, we can do all that this year. So in order to understand where to smartly invest your money and create the assets, whether it's going to be in computer-based learning or using artificial intelligence or augmented reality, whatever it may be, you have to have that blueprint, that architecture for making smart decisions. And oftentimes we're caught in the tyranny of the urgent of, I need this course to do that. I need this learning to do so and so. And I think for us as leaders in the learning space and learning organizations, we have to take that bigger picture, that bigger perspective in order to get the ROI and deliver the value that Steve talked about earlier. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. No matter how you look at different organizations, the most successful ones, especially the ones most successful in learning, have made that leap between the transactional learning, I need to do this because, or we're all going to do this compliance training, or all going. They've gone from that transactional, I'm going to scratch an itch, tick a box, into a much more transformational model. More mature companies who, what is the impact of learning? If I'm going to ask individuals in my team to follow a certain learning path, is it relevant to them? Do they help them do their job better? Do they have access to data they need today? Does it have to be a training course? Does it contribute to me serving a customer better? Does it make me more effective at writing a report that I need to write at that time? So we're seeing, that regardless of the media, or even regardless of the learner, because we had the same challenges with Generation X and Generation Y as we now have with Generation Z, if I get it right for you guys. What are these people expecting tools that they can use to affect learning, but does that learning contribute to the business success? And that can only come with companies who want to take that holistic picture, with companies who we can get to spend time with to say, okay, let's look at the bigger environment here. Is all that learning required? Does everyone need it? Or can we really move to a personalised learning journey that maximises your bang for your buck, but also at the same time engages and give the learners memorable learning interventions that they will apply. So that's not going to change.
Yeah, I think everything that both of you are saying really hit home with many learning and development organizations. And there's something that you said, Steve, wanted to pick up on, which was, and Bob intimated as well, the same thought. You both said it kind of in different ways, is we've got to move towards a service model in learning and development. We've got to start to treat learners as our clients, and we have to get more introspective and prospective about what their needs are, what those personalized journeys have to be, what they're up against on the job, and really sell out to the idea that getting their experience to be the one that they need, that's going to make learning better if you do nothing differently, right? And I thought that was an excellent point from both of you. It's a great segue, and it's almost like you've already answered the question, but the big lesson learned in 2023, is it to spend more time with your learners and business stakeholders to really figure out what learning needs to do and how it needs to do it? What is the big lesson learned?
Well, I look at it, I think there's commonality. We work with some government programs, which are by their very nature long-term and quite complicated. We also work with commercial organisations who might want to launch a product or initiative, which is by nature might be a 2 or 3 hour investment in terms of, I've got the information now, I can. The commonality between them is, I think as you said, understanding what the learner does. And we have a program and a process and a set of questions which we can scale up or down depending on the size of the problem, where we will sit down and say, well, okay, what is my job? In very simple terms. What steps do I need to take to deliver the product or deliver, as we said, the report or whatever? If you can understand and get a picture of what that person does, where does that fit into the organisation? So it's almost like building a jigsaw, and then you can advise on the learning. So if I had, in my perfect world, we would have that opportunity to not just do it, not do a survey or a questionnaire, actually sit with, and what do they used to, when Bob was allowed, they would call it sitting with Nelly. In very simple terms, what does that person do? How do they interact with customers? How do the people who buy from their organisation feel happy and want to buy more? So what kind of service do you give, or how do you bolt something together? And if we can understand that, then we can decide where that person's experience comes into the job, Again, that's taking time to reflect. Some people are coming with a base level of experience. Some people are newbies. Some people are veterans in their role. But what do they have? And then if you can identify those gaps, you can then go back to the organisation with a much more meaningful plan that says, well, your investment could be a bit here, a bit there, and a bit. And I think if we were able to do that for relatively small investment up front, you can save a tremendous amount of heartache down the road. And if that was our day every day, it would really make the job very, very effective.
That's true.
Steve, you used the word understanding multiple times, right? In terms of talking with folks, and Michael, it gets exactly what you said in terms of throwing this question out there, is spending more time with stakeholders and learners and whatnot. We use a term internally here at VBS. We call understanding first, which is the basis of our business model and how we approach our clients and organizations. It's not just executing, but understanding what's behind things, and it's those second order conversations and questions that often are very meaningful, very revealing, and you have to sit with folks. You have to spend time with them to understand those type of things. So I would definitely support what Steve said, and now I'm going to give you my answer as the old man get off my lawn type of situation. Right, of the biggest takeaway one of the biggest takeaways in 2023, and not very different in other years, is we got to stay focused. And this is going to be a theme as we talk through this. There's always something new and shiny. There's always something that has great promise. We need to stay focused on our broader responsibility, our stewardship to our organizations, our stewardship to the industry. And it means growing with that new technology, but let's keep the focus on everything else that underlies that keeps the wheels turning in the meantime.
Definitely. And I think, we talk about the learners, we talk about the organizations. Quite often our direct customers, and we're all the same. I mean, I find it with, dare I say, the younger guys here who are much more tech savvy than I am. They've always got something to say, and sometimes it's easy, maybe when you're in the buying position, to be a little bit reluctant to admit your weakness. Yet we know time and time again, when we form a strong relationship, people go, well, yeah, I actually don't know. Help me. And there are gaps there. And if you can keep that dialogue going, it tends to be a lot more healthy in helping people determine. Because the training managers we work with, the learning managers, they're in the same boat as their learners. They want to provide learning that helps them do their job better as well. So this is a whole collaboration across the piece. And, when we get a new contact, it's sometimes a challenge just to get your head around it, as Bob says, to understand. But to just, without wanting to be slow in any way, shape or form, just take that reflective time with you and collaborate. So, well, okay, where are we really going? What are we really trying to do? In a truly consultative way that can actually lead to quite an agile way of working. We talk about agile working patterns and sprints and the like, but it all starts with that understanding first that Bob talks about.
A question I was going to ask you is, should L&D be more of a disruptive force? But after talking so far this morning, how can they not be? And so maybe we should rephrase the question. So let's just say that we all know and we all agree that L&D needs to be a disruptive force. And what we mean by that is we have to challenge the status quo. We just can't take for granted or say yes again to the way we approached learning in 2023. We have to approach it differently in 2024. But, with this whole mind share, time and resource constraints, all the pressures that we have, what do you think is the very first thing, or the first things first, in moving L&D into that more of the role of being a disruptive force in their organization?
I think recognizing that L&D has a place at the table. I think sometimes, and maybe the pandemic was a leveler on this, because we found companies where maybe people had existed in an environment in L&D and provided a service and carried on quite nice. The pandemic made companies look at and go, crumbs, we've got an issue here, we can't get to people, what else can we do to communicate things, business is going on. What have the learning guys got to say about it? And we actually got an invite back to the table in some respects, and in doing that, I got customers that thought, we actually have a legitimate place here, we're across the business. So almost not being embarrassed about the fact that you are a contributor and have a place to have an opinion, which then also helps you see what's around you to prioritize, because you can't budget and time, etc. So you can't train everything. Training is not the answer to everything in itself, but communication, understanding how you're performing, understanding where gaps can fill in. So, as you say, you can't afford, I don't think LD can afford not to be a disruptor, but also needs the confidence to realise that there is a value in what you bring to the table as well, because you have a unique insight across the business.
Yeah, and Steve, I would take that place at the table analogy, and we talk about disruption, maybe even be a little bit bolder and go one step forward. I think for having a seat at the table is something that we talk about, and it continues to be a challenge for a lot of our colleagues. If you want to be disruptive, own the freaking table, right? We own learning. We should be putting forth the priorities, the guidance, the use cases, here's what we're going to do, because again, we're stewards for our organization. We have that responsibility. Let people say no. I'm not asking, I'm not saying, hey, let's all go out and get fired or whatnot and go about it in unwise ways. But I think we have to be a little bit bolder. Let's accept that we've earned the position where we're at today, kind of like what you said. But we're going to have to take more of a leadership role at those tables in terms of putting forth agendas and initiatives that, as you identified, I think sometimes we've been hesitant or almost apologetic to do, somewhat in the past. So that's, I would say to be even bolder in 2024.
Yeah, so I don't think there are many people in any organisation outside of L&D really who see the whole organisation. I think people don't appreciate sometimes just how much of an insight they get, whether it be in the technical functions, design functions, sales functions, marketing. They're seeing a real cross-section and actually are uniquely positioned to be able to join the dots and bring those groups together.
I think the only thing I would add to what you both said is I think L&D has to create a core competency of change along with the rest of the organization. I think we have to so change is inevitable now in this type of environment, and we have to have a core competency in change. We just have to embrace it as something that we have to, as you put, to be disruptive is to just grab all the seats around the table and say, let's grab change. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's not try to do a workaround. I think a great example that you both brought up, just threading back to what you said earlier, is AI is a great example. If we talk around it and just don't plow through it, then we're not being very disruptive. We have to figure it out. A recent study we did is 75% of people said, yeah, I know it's out there and I know it's inevitable that we have to use it, but we have to turn that inevitability into it's more change, more transformation. So I think it's great that you're picking up on that. I think an interesting and intriguing question, probably the one of the most intriguing that we're asking in this interview is, if you had some amount of money, if someone just came to your learning and development organization and said, here's not necessarily a blank check, but here's a pile of money. Here's a significant investment piece. Where would you spend it?
Yeah, I don't think you'd have to guess what my answer would be, Michael. And it's funny because money is certainly part of it, and as I think about this, time is probably the other, even factor that's in higher demand, than money these days, right? Uh, but certainly, again, going back to what I said before, I would spend it on getting the foundations in order, in place, creating your blueprint, understanding what that need looks like across the organization, so you can prioritize how you develop learning assets that can be used across functions, across roles, iteratively within role development. Um, I mean, that's a piece for me that is just, can't emphasize it enough. That's just huge. That's just core. Otherwise, we're kind of just doing the same thing over and over again. Every year, new budget, these courses, these priorities. It's that meta piece on, that underlies all of it, that says this is how it all works together. This is how it's going to feed what we're going to be doing in Q3 or what's prioritized for next year at this point. So it's spending the money there, but I can't help you with how to create time. If I could figure that one out, I might be running this interview. I don't know.
It is your interview, Bob. So, what about you, Steve?
I would agree. I'd follow a product line through from production to sale, and work and talk to people, and get a feel of what the challenges are, what the can get buys are versus the real graphs. I'd understand. I'd want to sit with customers. Why am I buying this product from this particular company? What do I like? What I don't like? Did I understand the explanation I got? So that just classics of, if time was of no essence and money was no essence, I actually spend that time up front so I can convert what I learn into something meaningful for the organization at the end, and an assessment of where it fits. Because, inevitably you can't do it all, but you can have a pretty good shot at doing the majority of it. If you can do that, you can really help transform. And I suppose the bottom line for us being here is people want to perform better. Organizations recognize that if they're going to grow, they're going to develop, they need to move on. So really, the point of having the learning development is to bring people forward, to bring their performance as a business, their organization, no matter how they measure it, and make a difference. And if you can't make a difference, you're not really doing your job.
I think from our perspective, I can be a little bit more overt than both of you are being, which is if I had that money, I would have my team invest in expertise, some chunk of it, expertise from an organization like yours. I mean, I think one of the inevitable truths is that we can't possibly know everything that we need to do now. And so you need to go out and work with experts like yourself to say, doesn't mean I know more than you do. It doesn't mean I know how to do it better than you do, but you need a broader perspective. Like the three of us spend a lot of time every day working with many, many, many learning and development organizations, literally globally. And I think this is our time to come together and say we need to invest in expertise. We need to work with organizations like VPS and throw in, push all the chips to the center of the table and say, this is what I know, this is what I'm great at, this is what we know, this is what we're great at, and kind of work collaboratively to solve this. So I would leave part of my pot to work with folks like yourself.
I like your answer best.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. If we're not curious and we don't turn to people who have got expertise, we're not moving. And we've been around, all of us, long enough to realise that what we're doing today in 2023, whilst fundamentally trying to solve the same problem, is very different to what it was 10 years ago in terms of the output. But we only made those changes because we're asking the questions and seeking the help of experts to share their knowledge as well. And it's got to be a good thing.
It has to be, and it's to just be able to reach out to people like yourself and say, I'm looking at my own learning and development organization every day, my own business stakeholders, my own VUCA environment. I'm looking at that every day. I'm an expert on that. But for me to get better at that, I have to go to people like you that are in multiple organizations every day. All that benchmarking, all that best and next practice, all the things that you're working through. We just need that. We need to be able to reach out and just understand what's going on out there. And it may not even be in our related industry, for example, and so we need to be able to come together as experts and work with teams like yourself to say, what is the broader picture? Which I think leads us to our final question. And this is a mouthful. So everyone in the audience, just kind of fasten your seatbelt for this answer. But what are the incontestable, indisputable, and irrefutable truths that need to be challenged in 2024? What are we taking the hammer to and smashing the glass on in 2024?
Yeah, for me, those are maybe two different questions, Michael, in terms of what the hammer is going to smash the glass on and what needs to be challenged. I guess I'd go back almost to where we started this. We were talking about the trends in 2023, and I talked to think a little bit about the marginalization of compliance type training or low end type training. And one of the things that I think really needs to be challenged, and it goes along with everything that we've been talking about here, particularly the hybrid work, the digitization, the infusion of technology, is that soft skills are becoming increasingly more important than ever. That because technology changes, because the way we work changes, doesn't change the way that we're wired. It doesn't change the intrinsic need or ways in which we strive to communicate and to be understood. And we talked about understanding, all along. For me, it's almost more critical than it's ever been, because I see more and more, particularly with folks entering the workforce that grow up as digital natives, and now, are graduating at a time when they may not even have had the type of social interaction that different schools and environments provide. Um, it's soft skills aren't optional any longer to be successful in this field. Yes, you can be a technical contributor. You can, focus on your code, do your line, but to communicate your ideas to other folks, to get their support, to create some impetus behind things, you have to be able to do those things. So, I'm really hoping to see a greater push on the importance of those things in 2024.
I would agree. I think collaboration, is a lot more than just a whiteboard or a bit of software. It's about sitting in the same room, being able to feed positively from your colleagues, to share ideas, to try things out, to have the confidence that you can make mistakes, to have the confidence that you can push on with an idea and you can put energy behind it. And you're going to get none of that unless you've got a decent interaction at a basic human level, as Bob talks about. We call it soft skills, but as technology goes on and it gives us all of the efficiencies it does, it means nothing unless you can share it and move forward together. And I think the soft skills encapsulates that really nicely.
Yeah, and I think summarizing, what you both said, it's if we don't look at how to do things differently, what's going to happen? I mean, I think every single individual that's listening to this interview would say change is a spectrum, but we do have to get on the ride. We have to go for where it's going to end up, right? What myth buster we're going to go through, but I would throw out one, and I want to get your final perspective on this before we wrap up, because I think this is a great place to get your last thoughts on the subject and these truths that we're trying to challenge. Is Do you agree that one size fits all learning is finally gone?
Yeah.
I definitely agree. It should be gone. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. 100%, Michael. 100%.
I think that's I think that's an inevitability, right? So, Steve, I mean, back to your point, you said it in the very beginning, and the reason why I brought it up, it was kind of just to bookend what you brought up earlier this morning, which is we have to personalize is where it's all at. All the great things that we talked about this morning, I think personalizing and realizing that we're going to have to, whether it's different ways we said it through the entire discussion, get to spend more time with people, think about this, do this differently, accept this, go through that. But if we're not back to this 1-over-1, like the way you work with your clients, this 1-over-1 saying it's one learner at a time, one thing they need to learn at a time. How's the best way for them to learn it based on their circumstances? I mean, that's really, I think, what both of you are saying in different ways through the entire conversation.
Well put.
Yeah, so you're going to give your time. You've got to get a return on it. If you get a return on it, you're willing to give more time.
And I think to that point, I know what you're both saying as far as return. We think about return on investment. We put in X dollars and got this return. But what both of you are also getting at too is there's a return for the learner. It's not just a return on investment of I spent this amount of money and time to get this result, but you're really making the point that if the learners don't see the return, then we can't be disruptive.
It's got to be a meaningful experience. It's got to make an impact. It's got to be memorable. All of those things, so that their expectation is fulfilled. If they, we all want people to come and take part in learning in whatever media and feel it's going to be worth their while. If you're there under sufferance, everyone's wasting their time. If you're there and you expect something good to happen, it will happen, and it will help you improve.
Yeah, Michael, you put that really, really well. I think a number of years ago, ROI was all about the business, right? Let's show the bottom line. And if there's been a significant change, in the past decade or so, it's shifting to that learner perspective and the investment in learners as well. It's so I think that's absolutely a great way of putting that in an area for focus. It's an and, right? We can't ignore one at the expense of the other. So just like everything else, our jobs get more complicated and more difficult, right? It'd be nice just to focus on one side or the other, but the reality is, yeah, we got to balance both.
Right. Well, I certainly took a lot away from this discussion this morning. I hope our audience does as well. It's always great to be able to sit down with you and kind of talk over what's going on out there. We should talk again soon. A little bit of 2024 goes by, and then we can go back and review this discussion and see how smart we are, right?
That's why there's the edit button.
That's right. Exactly. But Bob, thank you. Steve, thank you. Thank you to our audience. It was a real pleasure. Again, I'm Michael Rochelle, Chief Strategy Officer and Principal Analyst of the Brandon Hall Group. Steve and Bob, if people in our audience wanted to reach out to you to continue the conversation, how's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, you can hit us up on LinkedIn personally or through the VPS LinkedIn page, and I'm sure we can put links at the end of this presentation, or come through our website. We're at the vpslearning.com. Will be the best way to do a formal message, but as I say, if you want to get to either us directly to our respective LinkedIn profiles, that'd be great, and we'd love to carry on the conversation.
I think it would be tremendous for anyone in our audience to continue that conversation. Thanks again, and I really look forward to chatting with you soon in the new year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Cheers.